Imagine you wake up on a beach, no phone, no people, no signal, just endless sand stretching in every direction. And your mission is to send a single text message. You look down and realize all you have is a handful of sand. That's it. No wires, no batteries, no help coming. At first you laugh because it sounds impossible. Then you stop laughing because you realize something insane. Every smartphone on Earth is basically just sand that learned how to think. Step 1 is understanding what you're holding. Sand isn't just sand. Most of it is silicon dioxide, the same material inside every computer chip ever made. The problem is that beach sand isn't pure enough. Your phone needs silicon that's 99.9999999% pure. 9 nines. To get there, you need furnaces hotter than lava, chemistry that didn't exist for most of human history, and precision so extreme it almost feels like magic. So you start with fire, you build a furnace, and push it past 1,700 degrees Celsius. You melt the sand. What comes out is a raw silicon, dark and rough, and still far too dirty to use. So you refine it. You dissolve it, boil it, purify it again and again until you finally have silicon pure enough to work with. But pure isn't enough. It has to be perfect. You melt it one more time and dip a tiny seed crystal into the liquid silicon. Slowly, carefully, you pull it upward while spinning it. The silicon grows around the seed, forming one giant, flawless crystal, a shining cylinder the size of your leg. You slice it into wafers thinner than a coin and polish them until they're almost impossibly smooth. If you scaled one up to the size of a country, the tallest bump would be only a few centimeters high. You just created one of the cleanest surfaces on Earth from beach sand. But the wafer is still blank. Now you need to carve billions of tiny switches onto it. These switches are called transistors. They're the brain cells of every computer, and each one is smaller than a virus. You can't draw them with a pen. You can't even see them. So, you invent light itself as your pencil. Ultraviolet light shines through microscopic stencils, etching patterns onto the surface, atom by atom. You repeat this process hundreds of times, stacking layer upon layer, until a chip the size of your fingernail contains more transistors than there are stars in the Milky Way. Now you have a brain, but a brain with nothing to think about is useless, so you give it a language. Binary. Ones and zeros. The only language silicon understands. You build that into code, then software, then an operating system. Suddenly your piece of sand can perform calculations faster than every humans who ever lived combined. But a thinking rock can't text anyone if it's alone. So you go back to the furnace and make more things. So you build a battery using lithium pulled from the earth. You turn more sand into glass for a screen. You craft tiny speakers, a microphone, and a camera, and connect everything to that silicon brain. Now you have a phone, but a phone with no signal is just an expensive flashlight. Now comes the hard part. You need to send your words through thin air to someone miles away. That means invisible waves, radio waves. You discover that electricity moving through a coil creates invisible waves called radio waves, and watching a spark jump across the room with nothing connecting the two. Turns out the air has always been full of these waves. You just needed to learn how to whistle in their language. But radio waves fade fast. To cover a whole country, you need towers, thousands of them. Each one grabs your signal, boosts it, and passes it to the next. And every tower has to know exactly which phone belongs to which person, in which city, at which second. So, you invent protocols, invisible traffic laws that tell every signal where to go. Miss by a millisecond and the whole network collapses. Even towers aren't enough. Some places have no coverage at all. So, you build rockets. You launch metal boxes into orbit that bounce your signal back down from space. You now have a network that wraps the entire planet, built by you alone, from a handful of sand. Finally, you pick up your phone. You open the messaging app you also had to code from scratch. You type 3 letters. Your words become binary. The binary becomes a radio wave. The wave hits a tower, bounces to a satellite, comes back down, and lights up someone else's screen. You just sent a text message. Most people think a text is nothing, just a tap of a thumb. But actually, it's the end of a chain that took humanity 10,000 years to build. And after all that work, you finally send your first message. It says, "What you doing?